Hey guys, Zane from the Infinite Jukebox here, and I don't know if you've noticed, but it's not 2022 anymore, it's 2023, and the very, very beginning of 2023, might I add, which is something that translates to, hey, it's time for me to look back on my favorite and least favorite albums of 2022 overall. I reviewed a lot of music on this channel last year, and there was a lot of stuff I loved, a good bit of stuff I hated, and I've already talked about the stuff that I've loved. I did a top 50 albums of 2022 video already, and soon I will also be doing a top 20 worst albums of 2022 as well to talk about the things that I particularly was just not a fan of. But one thing that I tend to look over, and a lot of music nerds tend to look over every single year, is EPs. There's a lot of great EPs that are released every year, but really only a couple get traction, and that's a shame, and I'm guilty of not paying attention to EPs that much too, if I'm being totally honest. I only talk about a handful on this channel, and a good portion of this list that you're about to see, the top 10 EPs of 2022, are EPs that I didn't even mention once on this channel because I found out about them too late, I didn't have time to talk about them with so many major full-length releases coming out, and I just gotta say that I really do think EPs deserve more attention than they get. But without further ado, here is my top 10 EPs of 2022. At number 10 is Flow's The Lead. Speaking of the couple of EPs yearly that get a fair amount of traction, The Lead was one of those EPs, but deservedly so, as Flow take a lot of influence from late 90s and early 2000s, primarily female R&B groups like Destiny's Child, but take it to a different level altogether for the current day. An understandable worry going into this EP that even I myself actually had was that they were just going to feel like cheap imitators of much more musically successful groups from the past, but that's really not true. The production here is incredibly fresh and modern, resulting in something that feels contemporary even if its influences are obvious, and all of the members of the trio that is Flow managed to shine in their own unique ways, with an amount of chemistry that is genuinely impressive 9 times out of 10, and results in an EP that is much more than just a rehash of a specific sound that you're probably familiar with. And I'm not saying that Flow are better than their imitators, because really they're not. They haven't been around long enough to actually demonstrate that. That being said, The Lead and the amount of potential that is shown on The Lead, they very well could overcome a lot of their predecessors in the future if they keep up this level of quality and this uphill trajectory. At number 9 is Masakre's Morbid Extinction. With the band Masakre coming straight out of Indonesia, a very underrated place for a lot of metal and other extreme forms of metal, should I say, is their latest EP, Morbid Extinction, and this one is one that I regret not talking about on the channel due to the fact that I discovered it weeks upon weeks after initially released, because this is easily one of the craziest sounding things I've heard all year, album, EP, or otherwise. The death metal crust punk crossover that's going on here is absolutely phenomenal. The entire record thrashes out to basically the fullest extent it possibly could, and frontman Dirga is a great vocalist overall that has just as much grit as is required to really succeed in this particular kind of musical environment. Overall, Morbid Extinction is just a great release for fans of extreme music, specifically forms of extreme metal and really, really extreme punk. At number 8 is Collider's Excessively Worthwhile. The cutesy, somewhat dreamy noise pop sounds of Collider have actually been interesting me for a little while, and this is one that I'm actually really glad that I did talk about in review form on the channel, as this EP is really the perfect summary of everything that makes Collider an intriguing band. Sure, they aren't super unique or anything like that, but they make up for it in genuine production and very heartfelt sounding performances. The entire EP feels strangely innocent, but at the same time extremely endearing in nature, and if you're looking for something that feels like the world's most dense pop music, then give this one a go. At number 7 is Kessler's Endless EP. Eddie Kennedy, aka Kessler's latest EP, is another incredibly underrated EP from 2022, as well as one of the major highlights in electronic music in general for the year for me. The atmospheric drum and bass kind of style that is presented on the Endless EP pairs nicely with these breakbeat influences that it features, making for something that feels just as engaging as it is easy to appreciate from a compositional standpoint, as well as, again, a major highlight in both electronic music and EPs for 2022. At number 6, and I can't believe I'm saying this unironically, is Weezer's Seasons Autumn. The Seasons EP series that Weezer released quarterly throughout the entirety of 2022 is actually filled with multiple surprising gems, both in the form of individual tracks and full-length EPs, and all in all, I gotta say that it's actually kind of very interesting overall, Seasons Autumn. This feels incredibly ambitious by Weezer standards, which at this point aren't very high, mind you, but nonetheless. Seasons Autumn dives into a few different genres that Weezer haven't really worked in, or at the very least haven't really worked in successfully before, like alternative dance music, and it's better for it overall, as I hope that future Weezer projects hone in on some of these sounds a little bit more and to the same success that Seasons Autumn ultimately achieves. And I'm not going to say this is the best thing that Weezer have ever done, because it's not. When you have the Blue Album, when you have Pinkerton, hell, when you even have the White Album, or Everything Will Be Alright in the End, arguably, this is not the best thing that Weezer have ever done. With that in mind, honestly, it's up there, and I can't believe I'm saying that Weezer released one of their best works in 2022, and it was an EP no less, but genuinely I think this is one of the best things that Weezer have ever done. Again, that's not saying a lot considering they have like 5 good albums and then just the rest, but still, Seasons Autumn, great EP. At number 5 is Sun's signature self-titled EP. This is the debut from Sun's Signature, a collaborative project between Elizabeth Fraser, the famed legendary vocalist of dreamy synth-pop legends Cocteau Twins, as well as Damon Reese, the former drummer of groups like Echo and the Bunnymen, as well as Spiritualized. The EP itself feels very magical with a lot of chamber-esque elements that I quite like, with a slight psychedelic overlay overall that I think gives it a unique texture that makes it stand out from a lot of the current alternative dreamy pop landscape and makes for one of my personal favorite EPs of the year. At number 4 is Asian Glow and Weatherday's Weatherglow. Asian Glow and Weatherday have put out some great work in the past, and even some arguably contemporary iconic work from the past few years in their own respective solo discographies. That being said, Weatherglow as an EP is probably the best thing that they've ever done for either side of this collaboration, as they really do put their combined powers together to make something great. The record is noisy and lo-fi, but still manages to maintain compositional integrity overall, and it isn't so much that Asian Glow and Weatherday happen to have really great chemistry. The reason that Weatherglow as an EP succeeds is due to the fact that they manage to sort of fuse their own individual styles together in a mad scientist sort of way to create something that sounds fairly different from anything either have done in the past, and it just so happens to be excellent. At number 3 is Poppy's Stagger. Poppy is one of those artists that's interesting because she is arguably mainstream, but has done a lot of experimentation in the past, which really just adds a lot of flavor to the current popular music landscape, as she's put together dance music and pop music with industrial and straightforward electronic music in the past to make a strange mixture of sounds that, although hit or miss, have been consistently interesting over time. And Stagger is a complete 180 for her, if I'm being totally honest, as she really goes for more of a straightforward alternative rock sound, and it's probably the most normal thing that she's done to date. The influence here from 90s alternative rock bands like Garbage is extremely obvious, but that's not a bad thing whatsoever, as Poppy has her own take on it and injects her own personality into this style, which actually results in her being able to show off her charisma and her performance-related abilities without being buried under layers of experimentation, something that has been, at many times in the past, a problem in her music. She's never really been able to show off her own abilities because she's been too busy trying to show off how different she can be, and that's great. Experimentation is a wonderful thing in music, obviously, but there does get to be a point where it's kind of overshadowing the artists themselves, and this EP, Stagger, is Poppy completely tossing that notion out of the window and putting her rawest self musically forward. At number 2 is Two Shells' Icons. Two Shell are one of the weirder electronic acts out there at the moment, as they constantly use their mysterious personas to just do a variety of things that feel kind of unorthodox from a musical standpoint, primarily pranking or messing with concert promoters, concert goers, their own fan base generally speaking, and a bunch of other things that I think most musicians would not be doing, and that has resulted in them being pretty polarizing overall, and rightfully so. That being said, when Two Shell are great, they are great, as the entirety of Icons as an EP is just peak UK bass overall. There's a lot of fantastic neo-futuristic sampling here from a number of different pieces of media that gives things this sort of modern flair, while at the same time really looking towards the future of electronic music in general. And you may not love Two Shell overall. In fact, I don't even love Two Shell. A lot of their antics are pretty obnoxious and annoying and don't really act as anything successful from an artistic performance standpoint in my eyes, but hey, musically, I can't deny that they are fantastic sometimes, and Icons is amazing. And at number 1 is 100 gecs' Snake Eyes. After their upcoming album 10,000 gecs got delayed, it kind of seemed like no one really knew when 100 gecs were actually going to release their next legitimate project, and not just some random strewn about singles here or there, and then out comes Snake Eyes, just a randomly dropped EP, and from the second that I heard this, I absolutely loved it, as it represents absolutely everything that 100 gecs are doing right at the moment. Although it's only a few tracks and only 6-ish minutes long, everything that 100 gecs are capable of is demonstrated in those 6 minutes, from the obnoxious in-your-face style of the opener Hey Big Man to the surprisingly heartfelt album closer Runaway, which is actually kind of fantastic and pretty emotional. Everything here is a demonstration of 100 gecs growing artistically and in terms of performance as well, and Dylan Brady and Laura Les, although really kind of meme masters at this point, 100 gecs really can't be brought up in a conversation without people cracking jokes about them, are proving that they're incredibly capable musicians as well, and really the Snake Eyes EP is just furthering their abilities. 100 gecs use Snake Eyes as a means to mature from an artistic standpoint, while they never actually lose their roots in chaotic, over-the-top, very experimental yet still grounded pop music, and because of that, it's my favorite EP of 2022. So, there you have it. Those are my 10 favorite EPs of 2022, a year where I probably should have talked about more EPs, actually, but EPs really go overlooked every year, so, you know, if you're a music nerd like me and you're looking for some sort of New Year's resolution or something like that, try to listen to more EPs this year. Go on the Bandcamp and just find some random stuff that you think looks interesting from the genre tags or the album art, and then just give it a go. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to lose 10, 15 minutes of your life? EPs are a fantastic thing. Support independent artists, and now all that's left for me to do for my lists of the year is to talk about the worst albums of 2022, but I'm in a good mood right now, and I'm just gonna pretend like I don't have to do that until I actually have to film it. So, with that being said, I've been Zane from the Infinite Jukebox. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.